Hi there, I am Adam Kibas. This is another episode of our podcast. We are here in Ordu, Turkey. It is still a pandemic. On this hot July day, we try to figure out or find out about hate. We are using this new format. Like I said, I don't have any fixed or any fixed definition about hate. Rather, I invite everyone to come with me to join this journey, this research. We try to figure out what hate is, what it comes with, and so on. So the last time we somehow talked about the social aspect of hate, the connection to an object. We talked about cars and that a car can be considered and that a car is being considered as an extension of you, where you some sort of perceive yourself, where you show yourself to the world. But this has nothing to do with cars. This is in general with any goods whatsoever. This is goods are some sort of status uh, symbols which will tell you about who you are, and then we draw the connection to friends, family, that you make friends and family with the people you know of, with the people you surround with. And then, of course, we try to connect this with fear because we saw in one definition that there is a connection, or would be, we assume, according to this definition. We found on Google and Merriam-Webster that hate correlates with fear and anger. We will talk about anger as well, but however, that there is a connection, and we then try to some sort of bring in fear in that sense that you fear to lose your car, but 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 it's not rather that you fear that you could lose the car, or what you really fear is that you lose the value which it brings with that the car, because the car could be stolen, whatever, that you would use some sort of part of your manliness, or anything that you think or assume that it is manly, and so is with you being ridiculed. This was a bit intricate, where we said if you come from a social background, whatever, and we will delve deeper into this, but when you come from a social background or whatever, from a social background, then you fear that you could be ridiculed, that you could be diminished, and that your friends and so on, when they are ridiculed, diminished, or what your interest, this is what is mostly happening. I mean, I don't know, when you, for example, listen to some sort of music which is uh, partially an expression of yourself, which tells about you, whatever this music is. This can be migrant music. This is very common. I mean, if you're a migrant whatsoever, and if you listen to music and then it is undermined, or look at country music, for example, country music in the US has a very bad reputation, and if you like country music in that sense, then you would some sort of hear this prejudice. This is against country music and so on. Then this undermines, in a way, you feel insulted, hateful or vengeful in that sense, whatever it is. Then you feel some sort of diminished, and we then try to connect this to fear. I mean, you will try to avoid. This is what is reasonable. I mean, if you fear for your car to be stolen, because with this car, or on this car, depends your value, your social appeal, your perception in public, then you will do anything to preserve this car. Whereas with social interactions, this is difficult. We talked a little bit about the fact that it is pretty much easy to own a car or possess a car, because a car has no own mind. It doesn't speak to, or whatever, whereas with friends or whatever, or in general social interactions, are always with people who think or should hopefully think independently, and that these things then are different in that sense. That then fear would be the or some sort of a practice. This is what then really comes to strike that fear then, because fear is historic. We some sort of talked about it very briefly, that fear is some sort of a plan. You try to avoid a certain situation, like if it is with a car, you will make amendments or whatever to protect it from being stolen. I mean, ensure it protected against thieves, or as well as in your home. I mean, if you can afford it, you will try to make your home more secure, and and so on. So this means that you go through a lot of plans to avoid your value being destroyed, or your perception in society. I mean, is if you perceive that this car presents you in society, if you perceive that this car is about you and so on, you will of course protect. And this is the same, you could assumably, with social interactions. I mean, if you fear to being undermined, and we will talk about this a little bit later, more in detail, according a special example. But if you fear being undermined, diminished whatsoever, then of course you will in a way try to avoid interactions, or in a way this is what is always happen when you come from a lower social background whatsoever, and then you are in high society. You either will avoid it because you don't want to make a fool of yourself, or you try to react in a way, whatever. But of course you fear, because you assumably fear that you would be considered a simpleton, an outcast, whatever. We assumed in a way that everyone wants to be liked, but this is of course not the case. You don't. I mean, if you just do not care about other people, and this is what we will talk about it as well. But here we will only talk about briefly. But if you this is actually later with hate, but if you just do not care or respect anybody, then you do not care what this person thinks about you. I mean, if you have nothing but contempt for someone, for some people whatsoever, then it is understandable that you do not care anything about their opinions, and and so on. And 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 then what is of course very important and interesting is that it in those social interactions. I mean, this is what we talked about with the car. Your car brings you in a way a fulfillment. You are in a way feel more value or able or whatever it is. But and this is as well as in a social relationship. I mean, for those people who might assume that there is no connection whatsoever between a car and a social interaction, well, yes, there are, especially with beautiful women. There are some men, and I heard them a lot, that which some sort of see a beautiful woman, mostly white and blonde. They see these women as, in a way, a status symbol, which would then tell about your manliness, which then is some sort of, in a way, is some sort of a symbol of power, wealth, whatever, especially if it is a model, and so on. So that there is indeed a connection. So we do. This is something I have may have forgotten, but this is in a way to possess something, to own it in a way which then is an extension of your self. This is what we call the individual aspect of fear. So we are still of the individual basis, and there all your friends, all your interests, whatever it is, this is always an extension about yourself. It is an identity of yourself. The music you love, or the car you drive, the home and the things you listen to, and we said that these identities, this is partially individual, this is true, but as well as it has to do a lot with where you grew up with, and as well as those issues. I mean, this is what we will talk about it briefly as well, but in every social milieu, in every social group, there are some interests, knowledges, and so on. But there are as well as some issues you deal with. I mean, this can be issues about being recognized in some social classes. There is the issue about being recognized, being taken for granted in other social classes. It is rather about survival and so on, but not survival in that sense we would see. I mean, this is of course something entirely different when you have to survive for your daily honor, or if you have to, if you're struggling to make ends meet. This is of course, we do not negate that, not at all. I mean, I know how it is, how this is, and this can be very arduous and cumbersome. But however, there is special struggles, special ideas, and especially with rap music, you see this. I mean, I would rather even those gangster rap, you would some sort of hear and see they talk about those social issues. I mean, one very good rapper, which I think is one of the best, or was one of the best rappers, was Tupac Shakur, because he talked about those social issues. He talked about what it is to be in a ghetto. You have to be aware of one thing. I mean, if you grow up in Europe like I do, I grew up on the countryside in Europe, in rural Austria. You do not know what a ghetto is. I mean, you assume this is something which is made up by Hollywood, assumably. But then, if you hear these people talk about real issues in those ghettos, and this is of course something you have to understand, that this is indeed very interesting in sociology, that they can express or give these things in a way room to understand it. I would recommend everyone to go or listen to it. However, this means your interests are of course determined by your social group you wake up with. But of course, this is something we will later talk about. This desire, and this is that there is some sort of always something which is always catchy through all social milieux, through all social classes. For example, love is, even if you're poor middle, or let's not say poor, but if you are working class, middle class, or if you're upper class, nevertheless you have a love, or love movies. Like the expression of love is more or less the same, or how you see love, and so is so on, is pretty much the same. There are many more, so there are indeed some emotions, some feelings, whatever you want to say, which is the same through all these social classes. I mean, one issues then with these approaches. I mean, we again still some sort of trapped in this Freudian object relationships, which is very common within the psychoanalysis, or very known in the psychoanalysis, and the dominating strength within the psychoanalysis. However, so that we are still stuck in this, so that there is still some sort of the object which gives you pleasure. We in this thought did not went beyond it, and again we have to say, I mean, this is one of the big issues with Freudian object relationship, that it is rather always subjective, and you always think that is in a way illusionary, that it is not real, that it is made up and minded, and in a way we or I think this is not very sufficient. This goes beyond that. Beyond that, so fear, like we talked about it previously, has indeed an objective nature and as well as hate. So if fear can have an objective ground